Hi, Zizaran here with another build guide for 3.22, and this is called DoT Hierophant. Amazing Leaguestarter because it comes online so incredibly fast, has a decent amount of defense, and it doesn't really need a 6-link early on because you can slap so many things in a 4-link. So very good Leaguestarter that doesn't need a lot of uniques, and as you can see in the background, very smooth gameplay. You're just like going through everything like butter. It is not without downsides though. It does have a large amount of hotkeys to use, so if you don't like a lot of abilities, this is maybe not the build for you. It also does rely on flasks a lot for healing, so extended boss fights can be a bit of a pain. So for how to play this build, something that's really important is putting Vortex on your mouse button 1. With attack in place, this means that you're permanently auto-casting Vortex. It feels super smooth. Can absolutely recommend. It's not every build that has something that you want to put on mouse button 1, but Vortex is a really good thing for that. So it's just auto-casting that all the time whenever you're moving. And then you have to like keep rotating between like Creeping Frost, your Vortex, so you do want to like walk close enough to hit the enemy with that, and then you also want to use Cold Snap. Obviously early on you're using Frost Bomb, and you want to use your curses as well, so like I said, this is a lot of buttons, but yeah. You're basically spamming multiple like cold dots, and the way it works is, say if I'm standing on top of an enemy and I'm spamming Vortex, that doesn't stack, right? If I have 6 Vortexes going on an enemy, then I'm not doing 6 times damage. But the Vortex, the Cold Snap, and the Creeping Frost, their individual damage over times, they all stack. You want to keep all of those up, plus cursing, and early on Frost Bomb does help you a lot with damage. So again, a lot of buttons, but a really solid Leaguestarter. So as normal, we're using Path of Building. If you're not familiar with Path of Building, we have a video that goes over that here. Check that out, but it is step by step. So if you're a new player, very easy to see exactly where you're going to do it. And we obviously try to avoid using a large amount of respecs for League starters so that it's easy and you don't have to buy a lot of regrets. And we have 2 endgame trees here, one with no Legion jewels and one with Militant Faith. So we're using a Legion Jewel of the High Templar of Various, and that gives you Power of Purpose, converts your mana to twice that much armor, also makes some things like that are percentage based cost less, and yeah, you get a lot of armor, which is really good for defense. Ascendancy points as well are in here, and then if you go to skills, you can see that we start off with Rolling Magma and Frostbite. You do have some options as well with at level 12 you're using Creeping Frost and Wintertide Brand. And then honestly, very smooth leveling. I did do a everything explained for this fairly recently. Might have been 8 months ago or 4 months ago, but obviously the leveling meta and stuff like that and gameplay styles haven't changed a lot. So definitely check that out. And yeah, you can use a Frost Blink or you can use Sleep Slam if you enjoy that. A lot of people use that for racing or even both. Then at the end game, you can see that we have loads of auras for using Grace, Determination, Malevolence, and Discipline. And then we have a Divine Blessing Hatred. And we have a lot of mana, so should easily be able to cast that. In the in-game setup here, we have Val Molten Shell with Chaos No Damage Taken. And then we also share the links with a shield charge and a faster attacks. Next up, we have in the shield, we have 2 curses and Defiance Banner. This is a lot of damage. Now, obviously, it sucks to cast both. So sometimes you could automate it with an Arcanist brand, but we are a little bit strapped for gem sockets. Next up, we have a Valid Cold Snap. This also generates Frenzy charges for bosses. And then we have the Creeping Frost and Vortex setup. So this is a dual 5-link basically. So you don't 6-link one ability here. And if you don't have Exposure Gloves, you're using Frost Bomb. And I'll show you what Exposure Gloves looks like. It's inflict cold exposure on hit, applying 13% cold resist. Once you have that, you can drop Frost Bomb. You can't have multiple sources of exposure. And the exposure is blue influence, so either worlds. In the item sets, we have like a leveling setup just showing like generic what to get. And remember that you can craft resist on white items as we've done here. So you're mostly looking at like your socket pressure early, right? You're not looking at alching or essencing every item. Care more about your actual sockets and then craft resist. And then early on, you're just looking for life, resist, and suppression. We obviously always try to make sure that the build doesn't use any like hard to get uniques and stuff like that for starter. And that's, in my opinion, what makes a really good starter. Because with okay gear, if you're able to get 4 million damage with that, then, you know, This is a good solid starter, and then you can keep min-maxing later on. If you go to the notes section, we do have notes here, like how to get a 21-20 cold snap. And yeah, anything should be answered here, but it's a pretty straightforward build to play, with the biggest downside being a lot of buttons. For anoints, we have Ash, Frost, and Storm is a really good anoint. It's also very cheap, so definitely good to pick up. And for the bandits, we kill everything, and the Pantheon is Ranking and Karakan. Flasks are very important. Make sure you keep that in mind. You want a bubbling or seething life flask. That's either half instant or fully instant. Normally you have corrupting blood immunity on that. And then we're trying to get flagellant so that we keep our charges up a lot. And you want evasion, reduced shock effect, reduced curse effect, and increased armor. We do also, for extended boss fights, have replenishing remedies. You don't necessarily need to keep that in for mapping, but for bossing, it is really, really good to keep fast charges up. Make sure you get a lot of suppression on your gear. There's obviously a very big difference with getting 100%. Even the difference between 90% and 100 is very noticeable. And it should be a very strong build. This is something we've seen people do Pinnacle and Uber Pinnacle bosses with. So very, very good. It does use EB. If you don't know how this works, it removes your energy shield and adds it as mana, basically. And you get like lovely recharge. It's really, really good. Makes it easy to drop your mana flask. We're also using Mind Over Matter, so that means that 40% damage is taken from mana before life. Another keystone we're using is Ghost Dance. We do have evasion on this build, and that means that every time you're getting hit, you will recover a large amount of your, well, mana / energy shield, basically. So it's very nice. And yeah, Hierophant's a really, really good ascendancy. We're getting Arcane Blessing for Arcane Surge. We're getting Conviction of Power, so you do get some fist mitigation from the endurance charges, and also some crit, which isn't super important. Divine Guidance for even like better Mind Over Matter. So we have 50% Mom, and it's giving us more mana. And then Sanctuary of Thought, which gives us even more ES, better reservation, and it makes everything really cheap. So very, very smooth, easy League starter. Another anoint that could be good is any of the suppression ones, because early on it can be a bit of a pain to get suppressed. So you have Inveterate is obviously expensive, but Entrench is very, very cheap. So consider that if you don't have 100% suppression yet, even though Ash, Frost, and Storm is very cheap and is a lot of damage, getting suppression cap will make a big difference. Hope you guys enjoyed this build guide. Thank you guys so much for watching. Sub if you liked the video, but more importantly, try to die less than I do.